Please pay respect to หลวงพ่อครับ First bow. Second bow. Third bow.
How's that for sound? Is that okay? How do you, where are you getting, where is it not, at the back not reaching? Net, Yom Net, okay? If you can't hear me, just wave. Or just yell at me or something. Okay, we give it a go. All right. Folk on the Zoom platform, hello. Welcome, welcome. The shrine here is very, very beautiful. And what do you call those offering? Those, what are they called? Me. Anyway, they're beautiful. Yeah. So, and then say Yom Uraiwan creates these beautiful meals for us and beautifully decorated and delicious and so on. And we as human beings have the capacity to create. And we can create in a way that we can make people happy. That's a lovely, lovely part of being human. I don't know if Derek and his friends do that because the raccoons are always arguing. And I think Derek is the son. And mom is saying, go away, Derek, get your own food. So I don't think the raccoons have that capacity. So there's a chance for us as human beings to actually be very joyous in our giving. So I think I'm always inspired by the angel group, and you organized a large batch of vaccines, which you took to the north to give to disabled people. Wonderful, isn't it? That our organizational abilities and our creativity can think, oh, let's do that. Let's try that out. And it takes work. It takes work, but the rewards are profound. And that really is a big part of our spiritual life. And that is a foundation for good meditation, because the heart has a sense of fulfillment. You've used creativity, you've used your energies, you've used your resources, you've shared ideas, and you've struggled with disagreements, maybe how to do it, and had maybe arguments even, but somehow out of it you create this possibility. So as human beings, we have sensitivity, we have the capacity to develop skills. So the skills of of an entrepreneur who creates a business and then creates employment for 20 people, 30 people, 40 people. That's something significant. People want work, don't they? They want livelihood. Or a person who goes through the long grind of medical school. I don't know, in Canada, I think it's like 7 years and then another 4 years for specialty. And then they treat for various illnesses. And that's really quite marvelous. So we have a capacity to develop skill. And that's one of the joys of the human condition. So these are called the worldly dhammas. And sometimes we dismiss the worldly dhammas. We think they're just worldly dhammas, but they are very, very important, because that's where we live. On a retreat, we have a kind of curious, we have a possibility to do something which is rather more, which is different. And that's to observe life in a particular way where we're not manipulating anything and we're not trying to create anything. So we're not dismissing the creative aspects of human culture. In fact, we're celebrating that. And we celebrate that as sila, dana, responsible living, art, craft, all of that. Now on a retreat, so in that skill base that we have, we're using our intelligence to figure out how to do things, how to change them, how to make them better, how to organize. So we're looking at the qualities of experience and trying to do something about them, create, do, fix, analyze, and so on. Now, there's a particular quality of experience or characteristic of experience that the Buddha asked us to look at, and that's the quality of change, anicca. Now, that we call a lakkhana, or a characteristic. And when in these meditations, which I suggested this morning, say, there was a digger outside, and then there's the, say, bodily feeling. So you have two experiences there. And I'm asking, see that the sound of the digger is in awareness, and the feeling of the body is in awareness. They're two sense experiences, through different sense doors. And then I asked to see, notice the changing nature of sound, and notice the changing nature of the body. And that's called anicca sanya, or the perception of change. And what that does, the only way you can notice change is by not being involved in the quality of the experience. If I'm involved in the quality of the digger, then it's loud, right? And if I'm doing some kind of practice where I'm trying to exclude anything intruding, I'm trying to focus on the breath, and I'm really trying to get concentrated, then the sound of the digger could be annoying. Go away, digger, I'm meditating, which would be a trap, Or if the digger was playing a Bob Dylan song, I would probably be going, oh, I haven't heard Bob Dylan for a while. My ear would be kind of traveling out there and forget about the meditation. I might be attracted to it. So beauty attracts, coarseness makes us averse or annoyed. And the qualities of beauty and good and bad and lovely and not lovely, these are the qualities that grab our attention and keep us engaged in sense experience, which can be used well, or it can enslave us. So that's also how we get angry, how we get afraid. We get caught up in the qualities of our experience. Now, anicca sanya is the keeping in mind the perception of change. Now, the way we use anicca in Buddhism is in a vast number of ways. One, just as a common statement, we say life changes, big deal. Does it really take a Buddha to figure that one out? I mean, if you don't know that, you're in trouble. Any human being knows that life changes. Any farmer knows that weather is unpredictable, right? So is there a kind of deeper meaning to anicca? And I would say there is, when it is used as a meditative perception. So when I say to you, notice the changing, that sound is arising and ceasing in awareness. So you get a feeling of awareness being space, open consciousness. And then I say, notice the changing nature of sound, and then changing nature of the body. What I hope that would do is begin to reference awareness rather than the sense experience itself. And as you do that, then you incline to the amatta dhamma, to the lokuttara dhamma, to nibbana, to the peace of the mind, because now you're not concerned about the quality of the sound. You're staying aloof from the quality of sound by actually noticing that it's changing. And if you can sustain that noticing of change, then whether the sound is coarse or not, whether you like it or not, doesn't really matter, because liking and disliking are anicca. So you still see liking and dislike as through anicca sanya. It's attractive, anicca sanya. It's not attractive, anicca sanya. So you keep applying the perception of change as a kind of meditative reflection, a meditative theme. So shall we say theme? And what that does is it constantly brings you back to knowing, irrespective of the quality of experience. And that is what leads to peace. So this is, I would say, a more profound way of considering what anicca is about. There's the common way, which is good, like, let's say, well, like with this whole COVID melodrama that we're living through right now, it's very minor, and it's very, which is actually very helpful. That, yeah, okay, it's uncertain, different variants are coming, and travel restrictions, and should we wear a mask or not, and have we been double vaccinated? And we all say it's minor, and that's a very good philosophical attitude, because that's like socially makes us keep our sanity. You know, if we want security now with this whole pandemic, we're going to go nuts. We do the best we can, but we say it's minor. So we're very adaptable that way, which is a good thing. So then the use of anicca as a perception in meditation takes you to something more profound, I would say, and that's the deep silence of the mind. Why? Because you're no longer going out. So that takes us to Luangpor Viradhammo's famous rephrasing of the Four Noble Truths. The mind going outside is the cause. The result of the mind going outside is suffering. The mind knowing the mind is the path. The result of the mind knowing the mind is the end of suffering. And I think most people find that really interesting, because it's always, still the Four Noble Truths, but rephrased in a different numbering. And then you begin to see, yeah, okay, like there is the sound of the digger, the mind going outside. What are they doing? Why don't they do it tomorrow? Well, I don't know. It's pretty low over there. They're going to flood. The mind going outside is now involved in samsara, not in a bad way. Not in a bad way. Maybe it will. Why don't they shut up? Then we get caught up in it. But the mind knowing the mind is the path. And I would say the mind knowing the mind is kind of presented by different teachers in different ways. But one of the ways you could say is the perception of change is the mind knowing the mind. You just know that you're present, and there are these changing events coming and going, and you were the knower, you were the puru, you were the witness, you were not that. And this is not, it's not a kind of obvious experience. It's not as obvious as like tasting a mango. Right away, you know if it's ripe or not, if it's sweet or sour. Right away, you know the experience. This is not a kind of experience per se, because it's the observation of experience. So it's kind of, so what kind of feeling in the beginning? So what? I know it's changing. And what grabs us are ideas which are interesting maybe, or memories which are negative. And so our attention goes out into those things because just perceiving something as change is not exciting. It doesn't have any kind of oomph in it. It's not like chocolate ice cream, or it's not like pain. It's not like a horrible memory. It's not like a lovely plan that I'm going to in the future, because it doesn't really have any characteristic in that way. And so it takes, what does it take? It takes some kind of trust, I suppose, to kind of try it out. And if you try it out and begin to just give it a go, then I think you will find that you begin to sense this background peace, which is here and now, always within all experience. And that's why it's akalika dhamma. It's not a matter of time. Say the experience of silence in a environmental context depends on those machines stopping and other factors. So that kind of silence depends. And whereas the silence of knowing that that's changing, that doesn't depend on that sound, does it? take it to the body. Say this is more challenging. If my body's in good shape and there's no pain, then usually I just take it for granted. And that's how it's supposed to be. You know, it chugs along and it digests food and it breathes and so on. But then as soon as something happens, the digestion goes down, the eyes fail, the hearing goes, whatever it might be, I get the flu. All of a sudden the body presents itself in a way which is quite unpleasant and worrying. And then we have a very strong identity with the body, very, very strong, because that's who we are. I am this body. This is where I live. And the teaching saying, well, actually, the body is a part of nature. It's anicca, and it's anatta, and it's dukkha. And so there's these three characteristics. So when we are practicing this mode of awareness of change in a very neutral way, and I always stress this, try to do these kinds of considerations in a neutral situation which isn't painful, so that sound is not painful. It's just very neutral. But you can exercise that part of your mind to know change in the neutral. So then my body gets sick, right? Or I experience some loss in family life, or I get a diagnosis of cancer, or right? And everyone you talk to who has practiced Dhamma, they are so grateful that they have this witnessing way of dealing with life. I just spoke to a friend. He just has gone through chemotherapy and radiation therapy, and constantly saying, "Oh, thank you for the Dhamma." I'm so, because it was such a painful thing and such a terribly difficult thing. So my suggestion then around like notice sound, use that as a sense object, and then the body, use that as the sense door. And the body sense door is very sensitive. We're very delicate creatures. We don't have thick hide like the water buffalo, and we feel things. So it's a very threatened environment we live in, these bodies. And if we can begin to see the body as a formation in nature, in awareness, and practice that, then when and if we die, when we die, I should think that there'll be a very interesting possibility of seeing, well, what is not born and does not die? What is the Amata Dhamma? Is it awareness? Is it consciousness, right? And we can investigate that. Why? Because we've laid a foundation for non-attachment to the body. In that vein, I would suggest that, like, getting a posture where you're not struggling with pain is very, very helpful. So if you need to sit on a chair, and as most of you know, I teach a lot Yoga Nidra, which is the lying posture, and I've developed that over many years. And now I'm so grateful I can do it because my knees are not behaving themselves. They're not 20-year-old knees. They are old arthritic knees. And I can still get around. I'm still roadworthy, as we say. But to get a posture where there isn't this tension that arises around pain, you could say, well, just oton. You're a forest monk. Come on, get your act together. Sit there and don't move. Or thank you. I'm not a water buffalo. So you could have that attitude. And that's the attitude I think I had when I was a young monk. Oh, oton, sit there, endure, which was maybe good, maybe bad. I probably needed to be able to just sit still because I was so restless. But at a point, if you're always just holding the body, your sense of non-attachment is very hard to touch because you're so engaged with bodily sensation. So Yoga Nidra, lying posture, let me just run through that the millionth time with you, just to encourage you. But in the so yoga Nidra is the hatha yoga way of talking about the lying posture. Nidra means sleep, so kind of sleeping yoga, but it's actually awake in the lying posture. in the iconography of Buddhism, if the Buddha is in the lying posture, he's on his right side with his arm down like that. In yoga, in Hatha Yoga, you use the corpse posture, Sarvasana. I've tried doing that and my arm fell asleep and I got a cramp. So sorry, I'm sorry, Buddhism, but I have to use another school. So the Sarvasana posture, there is no pressure anywhere, and that's why it's such a good posture. And so for those of you who want to try this, I would recommend it, especially if you're, if you got arthritic pain, or it's just hard to keep your body up and yet you'd like to meditate longer, or if you have chronic illness, or if you have sleep issues and you get up at 3 and then you toss and turn for 2 or 3 hours, you can't fall asleep. All these different situations, Yoga Nidra is helpful. We have, one of our monks has got quite bad Lyme disease. And Lyme disease is a neurological dysfunction coming from ticks, thank you, that have a pathogen in them. And it's quite a horrible disease. And it's endemic in my area. And we have a lot of deer, the deer ticks. So we're very, very afraid of tall grass. None of us walk in tall grass because the ticks, they just sit at the end of tall grass. And then when a mammal goes by, they just jump on it. And they are so small in the small stage. They're so, you can't even see them. And all of a sudden they're on you. So we're quite justifiably paranoid. Anyway, he got this 3 years ago or so, or yeah. And he has a lot of pain, a lot of pain in the mornings or whenever. And unfortunately, he also has a broken ankle. And the broken ankle is something that comes from a previous issue 20 years ago when he had a motorcycle accident. And now he needs a very complicated operation on his ankle, which we've been waiting for a long time because COVID closed down all the elective surgeries, couldn't do any. So the poor guy's been limping around for a year and a half now, I think. So he can't sit cross-legged. He tries to sit cross-legged and then his foot starts to bleed inside the joint. Yeah? So what has he got? Yoga Nidra. Well, what's the choice? And just kind of, and he's a very good meditator. He's a good contemplative. And over this year and a half, he's really learned to use that posture to be both with the COVID, not the COVID, the Lyme pain and the broken ankle pain. And he'll have a maybe really rough night with pain, but he'll just stay with it in that posture for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours sometimes, and have a really profound meditation. And even though there's the pain there and all of that, you can see he comes out and he's quite bright and happy. I said, oh, sadhu, that's really good practice. So I guess I'm just trying to sell Yoga Nidra now. So you buy my product. Anyway, having said that, the way to do it then, the way I found best was to find a comfortable surface. I tried like a hard surface. I thought, I can't meditate in comfort. I can't do that, right? So I tried a hard surface. I tried a thin mat, and then I gave up. I just do a soft surface. So comfortable, because basically you don't want a lot of pain in the body. And then the posture itself is Sarvasana, which usually is straight on the back, arms to the side. And then sometimes I put my hands on my thighs because that feels a bit too open. Either way. The knees, I found, should be supported so they have an incline in them. So I put a cushion under. Yom Tana gave me this really cool Yoga Nidra cushion. And so I put a cushion under the knees, right? So the knees are not flat, they're like that. And that's important because that relieves the stress in the small of the back. And the height of I know someone who does Alexander technique, which is a movement technique, and she actually puts her feet completely flat, and so her knees are up in the air, and she's got a kind of spinal condition, so she does that. So then the neck, I found that the neck should be like, if you're doing sitting meditation, you don't want the neck back here, and you don't want to be like that. So the same thing in the lying posture, your neck is tucked in. So when I started to do it, I had my neck too far back, and that created tension in the neck. So you figure out the posture. So it's not just kind of sloppily laying down. It is setting up a formal posture, just like you set up the sitting posture. Then the trick is to, as I say, lay down and make a determination to meditate for whatever period you want. And then say to yourself, okay, I will now adjust my posture 10% more comfortable. This is very helpful. So then you kind of, okay, just let's get this perfect. And then, bah. And now you say to yourself, don't move. So the 10% is really good, because then you can't negotiate afterwards. Otherwise, you'll negotiate for an hour. Oh, I don't know. And you'll just be restless. So that cuts that. And then the adhitthana is to not move. And this is very interesting, because this, I think, is the key to not falling asleep. Because that's everyone says, well, you're just going to fall asleep. I say, well, if you fall asleep, when you wake up, just stay there. You can't lose. But what you'll find is within 30 seconds, within any amount of time, you'll want to move. You want to scratch your wrist. You want to go, oh, a little with my shoulder. But basically, you'll want to go over on your side, because you want to go to sleep. Enough with this meditation. You want to annihilate the mind. And so this is not necessarily a posture to make you sleep better, because it doesn't. It actually makes your mind more alert if you're doing it right. So then you've made the determination then not to move. And the desire to move becomes the object of attention. And that's what keeps you in the present moment, rather than the breath, or you can do the breath and so on, but actually you don't need to, because the body wants to move, because there's a kind of restlessness in the body related to the mind. At least that's what I found. If you have like severe pain, then you want to be careful, because if the posture is exacerbating the pain, then sure, you better move. I'm not saying not being foolish, but usually then what happens is that if you pay attention to the body and don't move, and you have some experience in meditation, then you start to let go of the self-thinking, the I thinking, the my thinking. And as the mind starts to touch that emptiness of thought, emptiness of self, then the body begins to have, I don't know medically what's going on. Maybe I'll ask a doctor to tell me, but it almost seems like the body now has permission just to do whatever the body needs to do for healing, say, or for energy. And it's very interesting that as soon as the mind touches emptiness, the body begins to respond quite often with jerking motion, with kind of a spasm of arm. And I think that's a release of energy. I don't know if this is medically true or not. This is my experience. I'm just sharing it with you. But whatever it is, allowing the body to kind of just be what it is, and then there's jerking motion, or there's a kind of, like, what happens is you'll get like a little pinprick of electricity just coming up, and usually you scratch something like that. Now you're not scratching, and it kind of coalesces, and wham, the leg will jerk, or the arm will jerk. And if you got your eyes closed, it feels spectacular. So of course, as I said to many people, then I thought, oh, this is interesting. I'm gonna video this. So I took my iPad and I videoed myself, right? I thought, yeah, and then I was. So then I looked at it, nothing, just Very disappointing. So outside, it wasn't so huge, but inside, it really felt like this explosion of energy. And that sometimes will go on for 20 minutes. And then the body just kind of lies there on its own. And this becomes a very good posture for contemplating that the body is in awareness and that you are not the body, that the body is a sankhan, that it's a formation in nature, and the strengthening of awareness as a refuge, and the body is being anatta, not me, not mine, a formation in nature becomes intuitively obvious, And then from that, the strengthening of awareness then plays out in all the senses that you have. So I hope I've sold you on this, because it really works well for me. But it is, some people find, like many of the monks think I'm just lazy. You're just an old man. You don't know how to meditate. But then I say, well, can you do it? And they say, no, I fall asleep all the time. So, hey, what's going on there? So when you fall asleep, like one layperson was saying that she was doing it on the floor and she fell asleep and her daughter woke her up. And I said, well, did you stay there? I said, no, I got to, you should have stayed there. So even if you fall asleep, say, I mean, this takes time. You maybe don't have time for this. Even if you drift off, if you just stay in that posture, then your mind's very bright. It's falling into sleep. What also happens is the mind dips into a deeper state of stillness. And that's when you can hear yourself snorting and beginning to snore. You go, and actually what's happening is your consciousness is dipping into deep sleep, but you are not asleep. You're awake in deep sleep. And you don't see this in Theravada so much. The great masters talking about that. But in Advaita Vedanta, in Sri Ramana Maharshi or in Sargadatta, these great Advaita teachers, which is non-dual Vedanta from India, you'll find all of them say that awareness persists in waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. And that kind of makes sense, because if it's the Amata Dhamma, if it is not born and does not die, what happens to awareness in deep sleep? What happens in deep sleep is the sense of self falls away, and we identify with the sense of self more. In any case, now that I've sold this to you, if you want to alternate between sitting and lying, and you want to experiment with it, I think it's a very interesting experiment to do. But if you find it difficult, not to worry. If in the times of sickness then that come, or no, let's take like as people get older, like myself, quite often sleep patterns are not so, it's more difficult to fall asleep sometimes, and you wake up at some, at like 3 o'clock or like that. And then if you think about it, if I wake up at 3 o'clock and maybe my life means I try to get out of bed like 5:30 or something like that. If I spend 2.5 hours tossing and turning, those are very negative states of mind. The kind of dosa, oh God, I don't want to, why can't I fall asleep? Grumpy. But if I then notice, well, I can't fall asleep now, and I really don't want to get up and sit cross-legged. If I go brush my teeth, come back and just lay down again and see, okay, why don't I just try meditation? Then it's not so difficult. And quite often you can get a good rest and feel very, very bright, and kind of put in a few extra hours of meditation. So if you do have sleep issues, you might just, give that a go, because you can rest. You can rest profoundly. Okay, so I've done my spiel. I do this every retreat. So we won't. Now, I've never taught a Yoga Nidra retreat, because if we all lay down, and I'm going to be in trouble. And then half of us will snore. So you have to try it privately. We did think that I could do a Yoga Nidra retreat. I could just lie here and have a big mirror, and I could watch all of you. But I think Yom Urai one, could you make some mirrors on the ceiling? So let's stretch our legs and then do some meditation. So right understanding is understanding the way things are. So before we think about this moment, what does it feel like right now? So it's a question that doesn't really need an answer. How is it for you here now? And notice that whatever you're experiencing, sound, body temperature, thought, that it's changing. So right away, you can be the witness of change. Puru. It's hard to stay in the present moment with that kind of very general practice. So we localize our attention, but try to come back to that. Bring attention to sound. Let the sounds become conscious. Notice the changing nature of sound. And notice the silence of knowing. And that's what we mean by mind knowing the mind. Feel the breathing of the body. Breathing is in awareness. Notice the changing nature of breath. And notice the silence of knowing. Mind knowing mind. Listen to sound. Change to feeling the breath. And the sense doors are changing. Knowing is unchanging. Returning to the breaths. Feel a whole in breath. Feel the whole out breath. Use the cycles of in and out to sustain the awareness of change. So this is anicca sanya, perception of change, localized on the breath. Now, if you're trying to get something from this practice, your eyes will become tight, be looking for something. Your hands might become tense, your eyes. So the attitude is receptive, welcoming change, localizing one whole in-breath and a whole out-breath. And notice we're not excluding sound. It's there, or bodily feeling, it's there, because we're emphasizing awareness rather than the breath itself. So the breath gives us the place of composure, but it's the composure, the presence that we're interested in, the mind knowing the mind. So let's sit quietly with those ideas for the rest of the sitting. So if you want to try sitting, walking, lying down, you can. Or lying, sitting, walking. Or sitting, sitting, lying, lying. Or walking, sitting, lying, sitting, walking, whatever you want to try. But maybe just keep that intention I mentioned this morning, present moment awareness. That's a very helpful intention. As you do your formal practice, just say, okay, present moment awareness. That's what I'm going to try to practice. And then just notice memory is something that comes and goes. Thoughts of the future comes and goes. And that's the contemplation of anicca. And then in terms of contemplation of anicca, try to notice the end of thoughts. Very helpful to really note thought has ended. As soon as you awaken to the fact that you're thinking, thought has actually ended. So actually make a note of that and then note the silence. And you do that a lot and you see that also thought is just a sankhara that comes and goes. And you get good at that. Okay, we'll meet at 7 again.